Hello, everyone. This is Jose Fishburne, and I'm the real life Kudakadian. And I want to talk about today about how the strategic plan behind Kamala's uh, business investment, like small business investment for like startup small businesses. So there was like a 25 or 20,000. Basically, just help them operate and start up, and also like help them cut taxes. So there's been like a strategic plan for Democrats to get the support of small businesses. And I know this from by Philadelphia's mayor election that there's been a shift in the Democrats' focus where they're actually trying to target small businesses now. Now, it's obvious it still applies to the working class because they have a stronghold of the working class with labor unions and all that. Even though that doesn't necessarily work, but it works. It's been working for them for years, but they're losing that support. They know they lost. They don't have a lot of business financial support either. So the plan is to like help start up small businesses, cut taxes for them, to get more loyal small businesses to the Democratic Party, as well as which will help them shift and like advertise more for support for the Democratic Party, as well as donations, and also get like some of the working people to who go to these small businesses to support the Democratic Party as a way to like rebuild their support from the labor force, as well as have businesses loyal to the the Democratic Party. But fortunately, their little leniency with the immigration policies, basically like just giving illegal immigrants, well, undocumented immigrants, however you want to say it, doesn't matter. There's also a statistic that says non-institutionalized population, civil non-institutionalized population, for to refer to immigrants. So it's so many words for the same thing. They're people who here with no documents whatsoever. Coming here with no documents whatsoever, no ways. So it's a really big problem for business reasons, but especially small businesses. Well, first, it wasn't a problem for small businesses because even though there are immigration leniency policies or a conflict now, it wasn't supposed to be always a conflict. See, what happened was, as you know, Republicans are more about the business, the corporations, and all of that. They always kind of been that way. They've always been about that big business, even all the way back to beginnings of the Civil War, like before the Civil War even started. Republicans were always about the business. They were always about it. They had control over the North. It was all about the business. All right, let me get y'all into familiar where I'm going here. Basically, there's been a stronghold from the Republicans over the country versus the Democrats, who didn't really have much of a stronghold over the country like the Republicans had. Because the Republicans, after they were united and defeated the Federalists, which was the oldest party, which was the old party about Federalists, this would be federal government stuff. The Republicans and Democrats who worked together to defeat the Federalists, they eventually split off, started kind of doing their own things. But Republicans started focused more on business, which made them very rich and more like they had more money, more capital gains, more influence in government with those capital gains. Because hey, lobbying, whether y'all like it or not, it's part of the democratic process when it comes to business. A business-minded country that's also democratic. So businesses can lobby the government to get things to work in their favor. That's how the democratic process here works in capitalistic United States of America, which is not fully capitalistic anymore, as there's now a balance between social policies as well as market policies. Central planning and market planning, so market system. But that's just how the democratic process landed it to be like okay, working together, sort of between the government and business. There's really no separation there, except for like Democrats don't really have that much control over the business, which mainly gave Democrats a economical advantage over the Republicans was really the fact that they relied on underpaid, or either underpaid labor or slave labor, which was at the time that's what they depended on. They relied on slave labor that gave them an angle advantage to allow them to even almost establish their own separate independent country within the United States called the Confederate States of America, which is sovereign states working together for a common goal. Oh, so, but they relied on slave labor, which is Democrats. But this is the thing with Democrats: they rely on like the low cost of labor, or is it low to zero cost labor to give them economic advantages. So this is where Democrats they never really now they say people they say there was a swap, but no, there was never really. Even though there was a swap on where their focus was, where Republicans started focusing more on the South as well as Democrats started focusing more on the North to get more support in the North after the Civil War and all that. It was they never really changed how they plan to do things economically. That still stayed like Republicans still support tariffs, and which I'm gonna talk about that in another video with Donald Trump's plan with the tariffs, and also like Democrats always supported like low cost or like no labor or free labor basically. So what happened is due to this big support businesses, as we see with the history of businesses in the United States, we saw that they like to take advantage of workers a little bit, prey on them, and all that stuff. Also, and that's why unions had to get formed and all that. So it was a whole big deal there in the north side. In the south side, obviously, they had slaves were trying to get out of there. They didn't want to deal with none of that. They was tired of being slaves. Black people, which was majority black race, was slaves during the slave trade. But before then was the Native Americans. But now they're trying to just completely erase Native Americans, make them an extinct people, which I don't, which I don't like. I prefer Native Americans be encouraged to repopulate, but we'll see. As we see that's not the main agenda here. So, but at the same time, they're just trying to get rid of the Native Americans because they found that the black people work a little bit better with more physical labor than the Native Americans. Their science of back in the day don't it was their science, their eugenics. So they're a form of eugenics science. So black people perform physical labor better, which I understand. Like we perform a lot of athletical, physical stuff. Say we do that a little bit better, but I mean, are other people really trying hard? Let's for us to really fully know that for sure. And also, there could be the evolutionary advantage where, okay, yeah, Africa is mostly full of jungle fields where you have to do a lot of running. Where, like, back in hunter-gatherer days, they did a lot of running to chase their prey and all that. So, running. So, it's just like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, you had to be physical in Africa if you're going to hunt. So, you had to be physical. Because, or else your prey is going to get away and you're not eating that day. So, other than that, which kind of gave them hunting advantages over Neanderthals, but that's a whole different topic. Anyway, but still. So, basically, they found that black people more of the workers type, better worker types for physical labor. So they had them doing more physical labor over the Native Americans. So that's why the slave trade, kind of slave dynamic of who they have as slaves shifted more towards the black people than the Native Americans. So the Native Americans, they just kind of went on just erase them, kind of agenda, which was an agreed upon thing between both the Republicans and the Democrats. So, as well as so now when it came about when the South was able to separate, the Democrat Party, they was able to separate and effectively separate, which then the Republicans, they had to reestablish dominance over the because you don't break up America. You don't break up the United States of America. How dare you? But I mean, it's within the citizens' rights to separate, so it is what it is. But even though, so they wanted to regain control over the Democrats as well as the Democrats, Democrats trying to do their own little thing, be their own little country, but public was not having that. Of the North was not having that, so they had to reestablish it down, it sparked civil war basically about freeing the slaves and all that. That was just all about free. It sparked civil war and gain and gain control back over this, from the South. So obviously we know the Civil War happened, but there was never this dynamic where they stopped clashing with each other. So that's why we have today where Democrats and Republicans are versing each other. But Democrats were always on the back burner because they lost the war and they never had the amount of control that Republicans had. Because the Republicans started doing their own thing, they started gaining more control for themselves, and that was an issue. So they had to come up with a strategic plan to influence government, influence the North, and all of that. This is where we get the free education and all of that, which was really about like just educating. They got the free education sort of. Where the free education? One of them. Well, I think they've been had schools, which was in support, but like, all right, black communities were like suffering a lot. This is where they saw their agenda. A lot of people think it's like the commie agenda, communists, but like communists, they do have, even though they did have influence in like the United States, it wasn't as strong. It wasn't that strong for them to really take over the Democratic Party like people think. Actually, what actually happened is like what people don't understand is that the U.S. and when it comes to politics in the U.S., we looked at what other countries did and we learned how to. We looked at other policies of other people and we learned how to utilize it to a United States American advantage, and not in a way where they prefer to do it, where it's just like, oh no, is the way we utilize it for American advantage. So like, it's not like the Democratic Party was taken over by communists. They might have adopted some communistic agendas for like social policies, but the Republicans are guilty for adopting some of Hitler's policies. So it's either or. It doesn't really matter. It's either or. So both are guilty of adopting some politics from other groups, from other countries and applying it over here as a strategy. You know what I'm saying? So for whatever topics they were trying to do. So now the Democrats, they've been trying to gain hold over the country, but it's a little bit hard. But this is where they had to like start gearing towards more like being okay with like public education and then all that public education to revitalize, to restructure, to restructure the mindset of the populace, which was how you get like a lot of liberal support and all that. So like liberal support from public schools. They're the main ones who like to utilize public schools. So this is where the support comes from with that. They were gearing towards that, but also they said a lot of schools were just to prepare you just to work really before then. The dynamic was just to prepare you for be a worker for a business. So yeah, it's a little bit things. It's like low cost labor, but see, America's we've been getting abused, but then we had to develop all these rights in the political system for all that to you know for business abuse and all that. So we had to develop all these rights from regulations. And honestly, we got businesses that kind of weren't favoring that so much. So this is where Democrats utilized that, to gain the trust of labor, to destructure, gain trust of labor, the labor unions, to ruin the business of the Republicans. You know what I'm saying? So basically, it's like it's hard to really explain it because there's a lot to it. It's a lot of details that go into it that I didn't bother to gather to put in here. But basically, the Democrats' agenda was to destabilize the foundation that Republicans are built on, that allows them to establish their years and years of reigning dominance. Reigning dominance. So the education system, targeting the education systems as well as targeting the laborers, all that. So try to get like low cost laborers, people like first to start off with like welfare to support struggling families, the welfare which came into practice around obviously the Great Depression, where welfare became a big deal. It's likely that anytime there's a crisis, the government always tries to utilize it to enact an agenda. I hate to say it, but this is true. I'm seeing the evidence more and more as time goes on. It's always a crisis happens, the government enacts an agenda they've been wanting to enact. You know, they've been wanting to enact. Either the Republicans are enacting it or the Democrats are. In this case, the Democrats were likely enacting their gangs as like people becoming poor. You know what I'm saying? Great Depression, welfare is needed. You know what I'm saying? So this is where the welfare came into play as an initial tactic to help Americans, but then it became like a tactic to utilize, much like how taxes were not mandatory until they saw a benefit to it to keep the taxes going. So that way the government always constantly gets income, always gets revenue, always gets money back from. So that's where this taxes then doing the welfare system, where they saw the utilization of the welfare system to get Americans to be well off while they are working. So that way, as well as boom, getting low cost labor. Because if you're on welfare, you don't need a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? So believe it or not, there was a lot of businesses, I think even with the Obamacare, when Obamacare got passed, I heard from like even my company UPS, they stopped offering medical, Medicare and all that medical because there was you had Obamacare. What did you need medical for? You know what I'm saying? What did you need private medical? If you're on Obamacare, just get the Obamacare. So so like yeah, there was those companies actually doing that. Like it's like, all right, that allowed for like low cost labor from Americans to work for low cost. It's like then every now inflation came up, so that's where minimum wage got introduced because like people had to make enough to at least live, which a lot of people wasn't. Again, stemming from the Great Depression, so they had to put like you know a minimum wage in place, which got risen over the years, depending on the cost of living as that got raised. And so as that got raised, cost of living get raised. So minimum wage gets introduced. Minimum wage, boom. That's all they need. Saying like, all right, companies, this is all you need to pay a worker. This is all you need to pay a worker, basic minimum wage for them to stay afloat, as well as you know stay afloat. As well as we'll give them we'll give Americans these benefits. To give Americans these benefits to give you a way of low cost labor, low cost labor, and as well, but you're still utilizing American citizens. However, they were still using immigrant labor, obviously, because immigrant labor was never nothing new to the United States. They've been using that as immigrant labor. Immigrant labor was mainly for strategic matters, like how Ben was being used with Ellis Island and all that, coming over and helping, giving us some assistance, and then going back to your home. That's pretty much it. Like it was with the Chinese and all that too. Like just coming over here, Price of contributions didn't go on back home. Nazis coming over here offering some of their scientific knowledge about space. Take your behind back home. You know what I'm saying? Or some of them probably even end up staying. But that's why we had Nazis in the country. But so it was a lot of that going on. And then let's find more. So the stabilization mainly comes from when the Democrats try to utilize the welfare system, as well as the minimum wage and all that, to dismantle the Republican financial foundation stronghold over, the nation, because they wanted to get back to, believe it or not, there's still some traditional values that Democrats hold themselves that they want, you know, but it's a little different, it's just a little different from the Republicans' traditional values, but they all have the same traditional values that they want to get back to those time periods, but they have different ways of want to doing it. So now the Democrats wanted to focus on destabilizing the Republicans' foundation. So it was at first just getting the benefit of the laborers, getting their support of the North laborers and all of that as well. While the South was trying to get, while Republicans were getting support from the South as well, to ensure their overall dominance. uh, so Democrats were trying. So it's a lot. Let me follow that. They were following that. They were doing that to stabilize the foundations. And then trickled over. Then they started utilizing immigrants, trying to get the immigrant support because, the South, as we know with the South, they were still employing immigrants for strategic matters and all that. Because, the South, they've been utilizing low cost labor. So they've been utilizing low cost labor. That's why things are cheaper in the South, because, like, low cost things were being utilized down there all the time to ensure that things stay low cost up there, while things steadily up in the North always increased in price and everything, because Republican, it was all about business and all that up here in the North. The South was all about, it was about business, but it was more about like just farm style living, agricultural life, traditional economy stuff, but also utilizing labor, low cost labor. So that's what it was always about. It was always about low cost labor in the South. So, and Republicans kind of had to find a way to appeal to this. That's why they kind of had like a 1970s where there's employing immigrants still and all that. But it was a whole big deal to that. And then Democrats realized they had to start trying to appeal to all groups. So like Americans, make it where Americans are more dependent on benefits and all that for low labor in the North. Again, appeal in the North. Get the interest of immigrants by offering them all these benefits where they can, get housing and all that and stuff. And it was like the benefits for immigrants undocumented immigrants slowly started to increase over time. And now it just became full on like, screw it, just flood in the country and destabilize flood in the country, destabilize all businesses, because like they was losing a lot of business support. Well, they had business support, but then they started like kind of losing it with their constant handouts that would raise the cost of living, and then taxation of the rich and all that. It was just never going to work out. That's why you got the taxation of the rich, where it comes from. They're talking about the Republicans. To them, the Democrats, the Republicans are the richest. They have the most money. So taxation of the rich, taxation of luxury items, taxation. They wanted to take, they were targeting the Republicans. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to dismantle the Republicans' strength, which was the finance, and all that. So That's where you get the tax the rich and all that agendas, and then they gained some of the support of people who were communists. Like we had a communist party, but the communist party wasn't gaining no traction whatsoever. But some of the Democrats have most of the communist support. Wonder why? Because you're saying something that they like to hear, so of course they're gonna join you up in arms with you. So they saying stuff that gets to support everybody, but the Democrats was never really focused. Their focus was never really communism or socialism. It was just about dismantling Republican stronghold over the country. That's all it was about. And then they wanted to utilize the immigrants, giving them benefits so they come here, work, and then it was still with respect to the businesses utilizing low cost labor, because Americans were getting more and more benefits that would allow them to like not really have to depend on working that much. That was the problem with the welfare system. Like a lot of Americans weren't really working as much because as hey, the welfare system's good. Well, I'm chilling. I make too much money. I won't get these benefits. You know what I'm saying? So that's why. And then also they said something about so it's never really about like no father figures and it was taking away the father figures and all that. Yeah, it was just good. I mean, they was just trying to bank off the women separation, like with men being dominant. They was just trying to get money off of that. Like yeah, men don't have to be dominant, blah blah blah. It's demands of that. Like women should be in office too, right? You should be making money. Should be CEOs as well. Blah blah blah. Stuff like that. So it was a massive just appeal game when it came to Democrats. Democrats has been their long-standing platform, appeal. Then the Republicans started learning how to utilize appealing to it. Well, appeal to gain traction. Yeah, but Democrats are too full of compromise, so that's why they don't get much anywhere. So they're trying to appeal, gain traction. Then it next thing you know, they started letting. It was gonna just let since too many Americans were relying on the welfare system and like not really working as much. Also unemployment and all that. They was just not really trying to work as much. So what they did was they knew that the businesses still needed some low cost labor from some people. So that's where it came to immigrants were looking towards, since immigrants didn't have as much right as citizens, as U.S. citizens, and they would utilize them like with fill them with green cards. Or you can get a green card, blah blah blah. You can stay here and work forever. Keep money, sending money back to your home. So that way you can stay here and make money back, send money back to your home. But that was them through legal ways, but also not legal ways. Mostly not legal ways. Now we see that more as legal immigrants taking more benefits too, just to have them come in here because they want them. We can get all this documentation to do stuff. Just get them working right away. Boom. Find ways to get them to stay here. Free housing. You know what I'm saying? Free housing from the hotels and all that. Get them to stay here. Work in the businesses. But the thing is, see, just like when the Americans were starting to utilize their welfare system to not have to work that much, which, guess what? So the immigrants, they started seeing the benefit. Oh, we got housing. You're giving us stuff. You're giving us money. And what do we really necessarily need to work for? You know what I'm saying? But see, that's the thing. They did work, but not in the way. Not in the way was expected. Well, what happened was, I guess the Democrats weren't accounting for how much influence the cartels had gained over certain Caribbean countries, well, South American countries over the time. So when the legal immigrants that came here, they were being utilized by the cartels to do things like rob businesses, small businesses as well, and sell those items on the streets. So that's automatically how your plan to help small businesses conflict. Well, your immigration leniency was going to conflict with the small business support. So it was never going to work in their favor, like to get the support of businesses over the Democrat. because you're creating all these leniences for the illegal immigrants, which they utilized to then steal because they got cartels wearing on their back. Oh, we'll harm your families, we'll harm you. You know what I'm saying? Tell them to steal and boom, provide them with those benefits. Provide them with money as well as whatever, as well as their homes to live in, the free homes to live in, all that stuff. So it wasn't. It was a strategic plan, but it didn't work out. It didn't work out because they screwed themselves over with the immigration leniency. So they were trying. It could have worked, but it was never. It didn't work, unfortunately, as we saw with the constant stealing and all that. And yeah, yeah, and then people, the American labor was like, yeah, screw you. A lot of them shifted over, but not a lot shifted over. Surprisingly, Kamala still had a lot of Democrats still had a lot of the labor support according to the statistics over Trump on the campaign donations and all that. But then then we're just talking about donations. Vote wise, most likely they all probably shifted over to Donald Trump because even though it's a risk of losing their comfortable lifestyles from the welfare system, where because the welfare system kind of got crap. They let it get crappy, provide more benefits to immigrants, all that, allow them to take over the places that Americans should have been in, but it is what it is. I mean, so they lost their stronghold. They lost their chance of a stronghold. Their plan kind of bit them in the butt. So maybe, who knows, they might come back, try to gain. We already know the Democrats not going to stop to try to regain control over. But that's the appeal for small businesses now. They're trying to target small businesses to get their interest. Small businesses have decided they'll be better under Trump. Well, really under Republicans. And which, speaking of Trump, I want to talk about his tariffs in another video. See,